Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to be talking to Tinderflint about what opportunities they present for new creators and directors. I'm just going to be
Hi.
adding them now.
Here we go. Oh,
Oh,
You need to spin your camera.
there we go. Hi.
hello. I'm just going to add in Elliot,
Mm-hmm.
and we can start.
Yeah.
Perfect, amazing. So we're going to be talking to you guys a little bit about the opportunities that you guys present for directors and creators. For anyone who doesn't know, these guys are Tinderflint. They're a production company based in London, and they've worked with the likes of Amazon. They've had work with Peppa Pig. They've had work with many brands. And we have Elliot joining.
How you doing?
Thank you so much for coming to the live and talking to everyone. We don't have long, so just as a reminder for everyone that's joining as well, remember if you have any questions and you're a creator or you're a director, please ask during this live because this is an important time for us to basically pass on the knowledge and any questions that you guys have. There's no such thing as a silly question. So anyway, thank you so much, guys, for joining. I'm going to jump straight in.
Okay.
With the questions, and I basically wanted to basically ask you guys like, how would you describe the work you guys take on? Because you do quite a broad range of things. You do commercial work, but you work with creators and like influencers as well. So I just wanted to sort of get from the horse's mouth like what kind of how would you describe the work you guys take on?
I mean, as you say, we work across the production spectrum. So anything from kind of small social projects right the way up to sort of big sort of TVCs and commercials. And I think it's that sort of diversity of work helps keep us quite sort of fresh. We like being able to work across that sort of spectrum. So I think that's kind of one of the benefits of Tinderflint is the fact that we can tailor a solution to whatever the requirement is based on the network that we have and the skills that we have both internally and sort of externally with the network. I hope that answers it. It was a bit of a
No,
blur.
it does. It does. What I wanted to sort of touch upon was the fact that you guys had worked with Amazon, and essentially like how did that sort of like relationship come about, and maybe even you know with the director that you or the creators that you chose, how did you sort of decide upon that?
So Amazon that just came through, just like contact that I had, and yeah, and it kind of quite straightforward. They had a brief, sent it to us, but within that, the creatives who'd written the script, they were very keen to work with a social first director. So just from our network, we suggested a few people, but the person really who stood out was Chloe Victoria Hughes. The client, they loved her and they thought that she was great on a few levels. One, because she's young, she's like 26. She definitely comes kind of from that social first background. She's a creator herself, but very importantly, she is a director. So she's managed to kind of straddle the two. She'll quite create her own stuff, but she's a director first and foremost, and she does a lot of work which is kind of social first. So I think there's sometimes like a little bit of not a misunderstanding, but I think agencies will think, oh, we want to get someone who's like young and who's brilliant at social stuff, and they look to kind of creators. But there's a big difference between a creator when you're like holding the phone up at yourself, doing your own stuff, and actually directing a room full of people that it's not just your talent. You're having to communicate with costume and
Mm.
the rest of the team. So yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
this sort of jumps into what I was saying earlier about tailoring a solution to that particular creative requirement. So we got rid of our roster. when we first kind of entered the sphere, we were like, okay, everybody's got a roster. We should have a roster, and you know, we sort of developed this roster over time, and they're all fantastic directors. But you know, speaking to various different directors, there was a real sense, you know, certainly kind of post COVID, there was a real sense of not wanting to necessarily be tied to one particular production company. You know, I think directors wanted to move about for that sort of, you know, diversity of work, I guess. Yeah, we decided not to go with a roster, but actually just kind of build up our network so that we've got a great network of directors, DOPs, art directors, you know, a whole sort of range that we can bring in and tap into to make sure that whatever the creative brief is, we're sort of giving the right solution.
Interesting. Okay, so you guys, so with that being said, how is it that I guess new directors can essentially, it's going to be a few points that I'm going to touch on, but how is it new directors can kind of get involved with you guys? Yeah.
It's reaching out, really. You know, like we are constantly on the hunt for new directors to meet. You know, we spend a lot of our time grabbing coffees with people, having a look at work, you know, going and chatting. You know, the work is obviously super important, but we always like to meet the people who we work with and have a relationship. That's a big part of how we work as a company as well. You know, it's stressful enough doing what we do, so we'd want to do it with like-minded people who you get a good vibe from. And yeah, like the way to get involved is sharing work. And if the work like sort of opens the door, we go, yeah, there's something really cool in this. Or even if it's just, you know, want to grab 10 minutes of your time to have a chat and see, get a bit of advice, we're always like really open to that as well.
Okay. Because what I would say is a lot of people that are probably joining are probably creators or directors that are joining now or DOPs. And I think on our side, a lot of the time it tends to be like we're sort of afraid to reach out because it's this idea of like, oh, we don't want to bother you, or maybe we don't think our work is like quite up to par. Um, I guess what I'm going to take and kind of like sort of like regurgitate back is that essentially what you're saying is like if you're a director and you're interested in wanting to sort of like work on the content that you guys work on, reach out, send an email, and kind of like plan an in-person meeting because you guys are like relationship first.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. Sorry, Rob.
absolutely. And I think that reaching out is totally fine. There's also, you know, like one of the big mistakes, I think not just in this sphere, but that happens a lot is carpet bombing of reels, you know, where it's just, you can tell you're one of 200 production companies in BCC. And it's like, you know, I would hold my hand up and say I'm less inclined probably to take time out of my schedule to go and meet people when you get that vibe. Whereas if it's somebody who's said, you know, who's done a little bit of work, or that you can see they're going, that I made this thing on spec, or this is the last thing I did, which I think is quite relevant to this bit that you've done, or a style or whatever, then you can tell that they're sort of serious in wanting to build a relationship and work with somebody, rather than just, look, I'm going to send out a reel, which Stevie and I were chatting before. Reels are not necessarily, in our opinion, great because it's not indicative of a single bit of work. So, you know, having something that resonates and you can see a clear thing, like being very mercenary for us, we're like, if the work's great and we can see where that taps into what we do, we're far more inclined to meet, because it's like, great, this is a real talent, they've got really good work, we can get this in front of people, you know. So it's about being chancing your arm, but it being bespoke, I suppose, to the company.
I think because we work across that production spectrum, you know, we work with a different, you know, a range of directors, all with varying various different skills. So, you know, I think being open to approaching us, having a chat, as Rob and Stevie said, it's about building relationships. So, you know, I think those kind of relationships are key, as well as, you know, the work that the guys produce.
Yeah, and because we work with, you know, directors across the board, I mean, it means that we try and cover as much as we can. So it's like all genres, you know, from comedy to feature films, you know, music videos, the whole spectrum. But also within that, we're very conscious of kind of we're conscious of where the directors kind of fit. So where are they emerging talent? are they kind of, you know, they're just above emerging, or are they really established? And it doesn't really matter where you are, there will still be a place, because agencies and brands, they don't necessarily always want to work with big established names. They'll come to us and say, oh, who have you got that's kind of like new and emerging and exciting? And that for us is like a big sell. So we're always on the lookout for new, interesting talent.
100%.
Amazing. So it sounds like you've got quite sort of like a broad range of like placements for people in terms of like whether it's new, whether it's brand new, or whether it's
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah.
And I think that the key to kind of, you know, our work, what separates us from other production companies is the fact that because we have this wide range, it means that we can be so much more specific when a brief comes in. So when a brief comes in, it really means that we can say, oh, you know what, so and so would be perfect for this, because we've got such a good network, and we're not repping 20 directors and shoehorning one director in a place that they might have one or two spots that might fit a brief. We can be much more specific.
It sounds that's amazing, because then it sounds like it's almost like not only does the director have the freedom to kind of like work with other work with other sort of like houses and things like
Yeah.
that, also the relationship they have with you, it's like, no, this brief is specified to you because you specialize in this, and there's that more of that close relationship and kind of paying attention to what their work is and
Yeah.
connecting them with where they can thrive, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's ultimately about not limiting ourselves, you know, not limiting ourselves in what we do, not limiting what we can offer to the clients, because, you know, as Stevie says, we've got this sort of wide network of people, rather than just sort of, you know, oh, we sign this person, constant announcements about particular directors that you might be putting onto a roster. What we do is, as Stevie said, we don't kind of shoehorn. What we could do is we go out and we find the right talent for that project.
Yeah.
Okay. That's amazing. What I wanted to do also is just say to anyone that's listening, feel free to ask any questions, because we have the amazing people from Tinderflint with us. So if you've got any questions during this live, just stick it in the chat and then we'll get to it. What I wanted to sort of touch upon, because when we had sort of like a pre-call, we talked a little bit about neurodivergent directors, and I think as this topic of like neurodivergency and kind of like the link between creativity is like becoming a lot more kind of, well, I guess synonymized. I wanted to sort of like, I guess, touch on like how is it you guys kind of, I guess, work with neurodivergent like talent or creators or directors, and any tips should they disclose, because I think that's always a thing of whether or not people should disclose if they're neurodivergent, just because sometimes it might be good, or you know, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
That's interesting. I mean, to me, like you should divulge, you know, any information and context when you're bidding a job, or, you know, for us thinking, you know, who do we want to work with on a project? The more information you have, the better. And if for no other reason, if there are specific things that we need to do, make allowances, for example, depending on the neurodivergence, you know, or where we can support in a pitching process or a bid process. If you don't know, there's assumptions that can be made and things can get missed. Whereas if it is divulged and we know the situation, then we can plan, you know, and accordingly, really, and build for it. I think it's, you know, we've had members of staff in the past with various neurodivergencies as well. So it's something we're really used to working, you know, we're used to working with all sorts of people. So I think, you know, that I don't know if you guys disagree, but I don't see anything wrong with divulging, because it's just more information to have, right, for us to play with and put into context.
And, you know, I think sort of diversity and inclusivity is something that we're really keen on as a company. You know, it's something that we make real efforts on. So, you know, I think coming forward and sort of, you know, divulging that sort of stuff is great. You know, I don't see that being a problem at all.
Yeah, and you know, we, for example, like on our UK shoots, 50% of our crew will come from like an underrepresented group, so which would include neurodivergent people.
Amazing. Yeah, I think I just wanted to sort of like talk a little bit about that, just because I think as people are learning a bit more about themselves, especially as creatives, and learning about how they can kind of like function with their creativity, it can be kind of like an invisible taboo. But I think we're getting into a stage now where it's almost like it's sort of a bit more at the forefront of, hey, my brain works this way, but I'm still a creative. Still,
Yeah, for directors and creators, I mean, this is pigeonholing slightly, but you know, like I suppose our job when we're engaging with a director is to do whatever we can to facilitate the scooping out of the creative vision from that person's brain to get it made and onto screen, right? So it's totally in our interest to be prepared and to kind of to work in the best way to get that done. So that like it's our supporting of that process is really important.
And as Rob said, some of the team are neurodiverse, and I think, so we're, that ultimately they feel included within the process, and actually it can be a benefit to the process. I think it can sort of really help that sort of creative process. But also I think we've done a sort of a series about invisible illness as well. I think 80% of disabilities, for example, are unseen, and as we've got a couple of members of the team that also have kind of invisible illness, I think that's something that people should talk about a little bit more. So I think people should open up and talk about these things. I don't think it's something to hide.
It's certainly not a negative. It's
100%.
amazing. I'm just going to circle back to the topic, which is going to be sort of more so the new opportunities for creators and directors. In terms of like in terms of essentially who you take on, because you work with directors and you work with creators. What is it that you see as like common mistakes that you see like directors or creators sort of have when they're trying to sort of find work with you guys or take you on, when they're sort of like reaching out?
I mean, I understand it. You're starting out as a director, you're trying to find your voice. So I understand that within that, it's absolutely normal and great for people to want to experiment and try different styles and, different genres, whatever it might be. But from our perspective, what makes it easy for me is if someone has a very clear voice already. So whether it's, really strong narrative or whether they've got a particular style, that's something that you can latch on and say, oh, that's interesting. I wonder where they're going to take that. And that's a nice thing to kind of be able to follow. A practical tip, I suppose, would be, I know lots of people like doing sizzle reels. Personally, I hate them. If you're going to send work, just send 3 pieces of work. That's fine. It doesn't have to be like a massive link to all your Vimeo work. Short reel, great. So we can get a flavour of what your work is like, and a little introductory paragraph. Yeah, I'm neurodivergent. I've been directing for a couple of years. This is my style of work. This is where I see myself going. Like to have a cup of coffee. Short and sweet.
100%.
Yeah, and the carpet bombing thing, I think, to add to that as well. You can sort of smell out very quickly if you're on a BCC list of 300 or every production company in London versus a direct approach.
Just saying hello.
Yeah, hello. ... Yeah, fill in the blanks. That's aside from just directors reaching out, everybody's had that where you've been in on a big long list, and it doesn't necessarily incentivize us to be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to put time to this.
It's about relationships, and if people show that they want to build a relationship by making it kind of personal, then that's all good. That's all good with us.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So then essentially it's about that intentionality. So any directors listening or any creators listening, it's about the intentionality. So make sure that you check out the work and you actually align with it, and it's something that you want to be a part of rather than a blanket kind of like, I just want to be with a production company.
And it doesn't necessarily have to align with the work which we've done, because on our website we've purposefully not put a load of work on there. You could have a completely different style to what you see up on the website. It doesn't matter at all. at all, as long as it's, you know, you've got like a clear voice.
Yeah.
That's all. So don't, you know, you don't feel like, oh, I've seen your ASOS work. Oh, I can only
Do
submit.
fashion.
No, I can only do fashion. Not at all. You know, the variety for us is key. So we're really keen to see work from you know, from everyone.
And that, you know, the way that maybe that approach would be is if it's not on our site or you can't see it in anything else that we've done, then that's a really good reason to reach out. You know, to be like, oh, hey, I noticed that, you know, this is what I do. I didn't see a lot of it. I wondered if you had an opportunity for that, if you ever get requirement, rather than trying to be all things to all people or just not reaching out. It's always, which is really difficult, particularly initially. But yeah, it's just having some sort of tailored approach. You know, production companies across the board, and particularly at the moment with the market being what it is, get inundated with people reaching out. So it's, you know, trying to do something, you're far more likely, or certainly we're far more likely to give our time to people who have taken the effort with us rather than the other way around, you know. And if it's the case that it's, you know, just an email reply or looking through the work or meeting up for a coffee with, you know, there's only a certain amount of hours in the day, so you do have to be selective. And if people have made effort, we are more likely to reciprocate and make effort back.
Yeah. And even if we don't have time to meet in coffee, you know, the work is logged, it's there, and you know, you're always thinking, oh, hang a second, I remember so and so's work, that could work for this project. So, you know, don't be put off if we just say, love your work, we'll keep your work, you know, we'll keep you in mind. It's not a fob off.
Hey, I think, and do you know what? I'm so glad that you said that, because I think I've had that said to me, and I'm like, okay, they hate my work, okay, bye. But actually, you know, I guess in that case, it's like you don't fit everything, which is a good thing, because then you're not going to be put into a situation where this doesn't match your style or
Absolutely.
work. It's
Yeah. It's as Stevie said, it's finding the voice and having a clear voice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Much easier for us.
You know, I don't have at the moment with a stinking cold. But,
That's why he's in a different room.
Yeah.
yeah, I've been quarantined.
I just wanted to remind everyone in the chat that we are talking about opportunities that Tinderflint offers to new directors and creators. So if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. What I wanted to just sort of ask now, I guess, is like, what sort of opportunities currently now like are available for new directors, and like what are you currently sort of like working on essentially?
I mean, as always, it's a mixed bag for us. We've got some long-running documentary projects that is going on, shooting out in India and Australia, but it's kind of a, you know, we're in script hunting pitch season a lot at the moment, so the opportunities are there because the scripts are there. You know, that's prime time for directors to be reaching out, because, you know, as stuff filters down to us through agencies or brands, we're then immediately thinking, right, who do we get in to do this for? So, you know, it's we never really have, I don't think, this is probably a bit of an, you know, over admission, we never know the frequency of scripts and how they're going to come in. It's peaks and troughs, and they all come like London buses usually. You know, there's nothing for a month and then you get 10. So it's really difficult to put a sort of timing on it and it be, you know, this is what is going on, and it's nice and linear.
Yeah. And then you have to suggest directors immediately.
Yeah.
So you have, you know, script comes in on Monday, you send off suggestions Monday afternoon, and then you might hear later on in the week how they were received.
It's quick. That's why, and you know, so much of it is timing, and that's where being front of mind is really good, because it does work like that. You know, the scripts will go out from an agency or a brand, and we've got such a small window to work out between us who we think we're going to get to them.
Yeah.
Obviously, we always check with directors about are they available and interested in the scripts and stuff as well, rather than just chucking names out. So you are really first come, first serve with people. The sooner you can get people's names in,
And then just for, young directors out there who might not know, when a production company puts forward directors, on the whole, you'll put forward about 3, possibly 4. You really wouldn't do more than that. If you know that there's one particular director is absolutely spot on, you might try and put all your eggs in one basket and say this person is the person to do this. So, but sometimes you'll put 3 usually you'll put 3 directors forward that would be good for the script but have a slight variation.
Yeah.
So it's not giving 3 of exactly the same. So there's a difference between them.
Okay, so I guess in that respect, it's important to then make sure that on the director's side that they have updated links, updated sort of everything, so that they're sort of ready to be put forward.
Yeah, for us, the way that we work, and we know that because we don't have our fixed roster, what's helpful is if the young directors have Vimeo, put their work up on Vimeo, because for us, and that's really easy. It just means that we can burn reels super quickly. But also, always send us new work. If we've already got a conversation going, hey, I've just done this new piece of work, send it through. And it's good because it reminds us that you're there, and it's good to see your development, and we love like personal projects and stuff like that. I think those often it's personal projects that young directors do themselves that get them the work. It's all we were discussing earlier, like doing spec work. You're thinking, Rob and I were talking earlier, like, I quite like the idea of comedy. I've never done it before. Have a go. Just do something. Write something. And you just never know, what you'll come up with.
Yeah.
I mean, a good example. So before I was at Tinderflint, I was at Sweet Shop. And there was a young director in Australia called Max Barden. And he basically made funny films of himself. He wrote these films, he starred in them. He's now one of the biggest directors. He's now with Anonymous Content, I think here and in the States, and he's had an absolutely stratospheric rise. And it all started with having a reel that really stood out. Sweet Shop were great in that they said they saw something, and then they completely nurtured him, and he was kind of taken under the wing of other comedy directors. But it was that initial thing,
So it's that coming down to it. It's so funny because I often find with these conversations, with anyone, whether it's directors or with people in production companies, it comes back to essentially invest your time in making the stuff that you want to make.
Yeah.
Because then essentially that's the stuff people are trying to hire you from.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this and you're a director and you're like, I want to get hired, I want to get signed, I want to get seen, the only way to do that essentially is to make the things that you want to see, essentially.
Yeah, and do you know what? Something that happens a lot, and I think there's obviously a very clear reason why this is done usually, but in the commercial space for somebody like Tinderflint, who are doing the vast majority of the stuff that we do is ads. Like it's a format separate from a music video or a short film or whatever it might be. That spec work. Recently, I had a young director come to me who had made a couple of spec ads, for an FMC. In his tone of voice, it had his sort of like quirky comedy, but it was very clearly an ad for a specific brand. I won't like name names and stuff that he had done. And so again, like for saying, makes my life easier because I'm not having to say, well, yeah, he's done this music video and this is wicked. And there is value in music videos as well for different things. But something that I think is underutilized is those spec projects. If you want to be doing ads, like if your thing is streetwear and you want to be doing like Nike commercials or whatever, make that and show me a spec one of that rather than a profile piece or a short doco or a music video in little bits, because you're like, it's such an easy correlation for me to go, yeah, this is what they want to do. This is I can see their style. I can see how to commercialize this. And you can share that to brands. Like in that example with this young director, he showed me he'd done this thing set in space and, he'd done a really good job of it. But I was like, you could, you could take that to that brand now, and it wouldn't be distinctive from their content that they're putting out. And I was just like, this is such an easy fit for us to go, I want to work with this guy because he's already done this with our support and, a proper budget and more time. He could do X, Y, and Z more, so it's like making what you want to make, whether that is music videos or doco, or if you want to do commercials, it's, you're removing the steps of separation between what you want to do and what you're showing people.
And also another thing which, is probably less expensive to do is, and you're starting out, is having a look at social content. Have a look at like the big brands, what sort of social content they're making, because some brands are still trying to put a proper commercial on the social content space, but there are others who are now kind of moving on from that, and they're making content specifically for social content. So, that is going to be blowing up. It already has. And I think that's like an area that young directors should really, really have a look at.
Nice. I think, yeah, like with a lot of brands going social first, I think I've been seeing a lot more social first directors and going in that way of content. In terms of advice, I'd say, because I just on that sort of like that strain, I wanted to sort of see if there's any advice that you guys sort of like would give to any new directors that are thinking about, okay, I might reach out, or maybe, it is reaching out, or whether or not the content that they have fits your style, or anything essentially that they can kind of like chew on for later that you have that, maybe it's not commonly said in this space.
I think
that's a large ask.
Yeah.
I get.
I think we've already kind of touched on it. Keep. You might have only done one piece of work. That's fine, but you just share it, and then just tell us a little bit about you. There's no point kind of trying to bullshit. It's like we can see what you can do, and we'll be honest. We'll be like, that's great. Go away, and I like what you're doing. Go away, and come back to me when you've done a few more pieces. Or we're very happy to be honest with people.
And take away the thing before about you being reticent. Sorry, Al.
That's right.
About being reticent to reach out, and we don't want to bother you with your time. Like I get that, but it's just it's people at the end of the day, right? There's a person at the other end of the email, so just reach out and be honest, and that's I think that'll stand you in very good stead.
Another thing that sorry, I keep interrupting you. You go.
I was just going to say, it doesn't have to be big budget stuff either. As long as your voice is clear within that work, then that's all good. And that's the start of a conversation, isn't it? And the start of building a relationship. But I don't think that you should necessarily feel that you've got to chuck loads of money at stuff, because understand that people come from different walks of life, and they may not have those funds available. So I think it's important to not feel that you've got to spend loads of money on stuff, because I think going back to that diversity and inclusion point that we were talking about earlier on, that goes for class as well. I think if you're coming from a background where you don't have that sort of income, don't see that as a barrier. As long as your voice comes through, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. And then just like other little tips of, just try and immerse yourself in the industry as much as you can. If you can, I always think if you can get a job as being a director's assistant at a production company, it'll stand you in such good stead. So you're doing treatments constantly for directors. You learn about the different styles. You're meeting different directors. You're being on set. Pretty much all the DAs that I've worked with, they're all directors now. So that's like another route, exactly. Or be a runner or whatever it is. It just depends where the directors are in their careers. I'm talking about people who haven't really made anything yet, but would like to get into directing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think you've given a lot of like food for thought and also just like been incredibly like forthcoming and honest about it, which I love because I know that on the other side of things, it can feel a bit like you're scratching at kind of just like anything. You're like, I'm gonna try anything
Yeah,
everywhere and just like
it's like you feel desperate, don't you?
exactly. And I think that sometimes can come across, but really and truly, the art, like the real kind of work is just put your head down, do your thing that you want
Yeah,
to do, and it will the fruit will bear from the tree essentially.
if you build it,
Um,
they will come.
exactly, and I just think that it's so important to kind of like hammer home that message. But I'm gonna wrap up the live. Thank you so much, guys, for joining and giving your time. And yeah, anyone who is interested in working with Tinderflint, please reach out to them. And we're going to be holding these lives quite regularly. So if you are interested in sort of watching this whole back, it will be available on the Instagram and on the Shiny website. But until then, thank you so much, guys, and take care.
Pleasure.
See you
Thanks.
later. Thanks for
Cheers,
having me.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.